My top 10 favorite current fighters in the UFC. How I determine this ranking: the fighter has to be active or have a fight scheduled or be heavily rumored to be fighting in the UFC octagon. There are a few individuals on this ranking that have been inactive for quite a while, but they either have a fight scheduled or are heavily rumored to be fighting in the UFC octagon this year. And this ranking will only include people that are currently in the UFC, as I hardly ever watch anything outside of the UFC. If I did have to include one fighter from another organization, that would be Anthony Rumble Johnson of Bellator. He would come in at number 4. I've watched Bellator one time in the past 2 years, and that was the night that Anthony Rumble Johnson made his debut with Bellator in their Grand Prix for the light heavyweight Grand Prix. And he got rocked in the first round pretty bad, but ended up knocking out the guy that he fought in the second round. But he was supposed to move on and then pulled out of the next fight, and we don't know what's up with Rumble, but sounds like he's about to start training again possibly. But yeah, so nobody outside the UFC in this ranking video. And you know what? Before I get into the ranking, if you're a fan of the UFC, make sure you smash the like button. Sound off in the comment section about what your thoughts are. What would be your ranking, your top 10 current fighters in the UFC? Obviously, our lists are going to be much different. You're going to probably have a bunch of different people, and you're going to look at me like I'm an idiot. But you know what? Everybody can have a different opinion. Fights that you want to see, and fights that you're really excited that are about to happen. So just make sure you leave that. And of course, subscribe to the channel. But let's start the ranking off. Number 10, making their debut in a fighter ranking for me, and that would be Hamza Chemiev. He went through 4 fighters with ease for starting his UFC career, and then he got put into the fire against a guy that's way more skilled than the other people combined, probably, in Gilbert Burns, and had a war. And it was a back and forth war. It could have really went either way. Hamza Chemiev did get the decision victory, and I think he's going to learn a lot from that fight. And he's a guy that'll fight at welterweight and then fight at middleweight, which is awesome that he wants to fight all the time. And I think he's just going to learn a lot more. And I really do think that he's going to be a stud in the coming years. And he's really good, too, as far as, striking, grappling, and wrestling. And I do think that he's going to be a force to be reckoned with in the future. So Hamza Chemiev is my current number 10 favorite fighter. Number 9, I had mentioned that there's going to be people that have been inactive for a while. This person does have a fight scheduled on June 11th, a rematch against Zhang Weili, and that would be Joanna Gaichy. I really like Joanna. She is awesome. She's Joanna champion. She's got the look. She's kind of the heel persona, but she's being more likable as of late. I don't know if that's just now, but she'll start getting more, Joanna champion towards the fight. But her war with Zhang Weili in 2020, right before the pandemic started, was crazy. Her head at the end of the fight was the most scary thing I've ever seen watching a fight. But she took it to Zhang Weili. And I really think that fight could have gone either way. I thought Joanna won the fight when it was all said and done, but they did give it to Zhang Weili. But it was a crazy fight. And if there was another 30 seconds left in that fight, Joanna hit a spinning back fist with 5 seconds left. Had there been more time, she might have been able to capitalize that. I don't think Zhang Weili was rocked by any means, but it's possible that was the hardest shot that she hit her with in the fight. But it is what it is. But Joanna Gaichy is my number 9, and she has the weirdest name, Young Gaichy. I think it's Young Gaichy, and it's Joanna. Sometimes I say it right, sometimes I say it wrong, but nonetheless, she's my number 9. My number 8 is the current welterweight champion of the world, and wants to make the claim to fame to be the GOAT of the welterweight division, which I'm not necessarily against, and that would be Kamaru Usman. Usman has dominated people. He beat Jorge Masvidal twice. He beat Colby Covington twice. He beat Gilbert Burns. He beat Tyron Woodley. Well, everybody's beaten Tyron Woodley as of late, even Jake Paul. But, well, unless that fight was staged. But Usman has been quite impressive, and we shall see what's on the horizon for Usman. If he can get past Leon Edwards, does he fight Canelo at some point? I don't think that fight's really going to happen, but he wants it. Obviously, he's dealing with his hand issues right now. He hasn't been okayed to, the doctors haven't cleared him yet, but I suspect he'll fight in August, possibly September, October-ish against Leon Edwards, unless something else better comes along, like Hamza Chemiev. I think Chemiev and Edwards should fight for the #1 contender. Just my opinion. The wars with Colby, Covington have been close, but I think Usman certainly won one in my book. I'm not sure about both of them, but certainly I think the second fight, I think he won for sure. That first fight was so fucking close. What a war. But anyway, Kamaru Usman is my number 8. My number 7, a fighter that doesn't fight that much as of late, but he does have a fight scheduled in July. That would be Ruthless Robbie Lawler. Robbie Lawler is old school. He's fun to watch. He turns it up when he has to, if he's still in the fight. And that fight against Carlos Condit, that last 2 minutes or so, when Robbie Lawler just started unloading on Condit, I thought Condit was going to be the new champion at the end of the fight, no matter what. I didn't think that was a 10-8 round at the end, but it is what it is. Robbie Lawler retained. Obviously, he hasn't been as good since, but I really do like Robbie Lawler. He's fun to watch. He should have beat Ben Askren, I think. That should have been, well, I mean, anything can happen, but I mean, he slammed him on his head practically, and that was an interesting fight. I was really excited watching that, but then Askren won, and I was pissed, but it is what it is. But Robbie Lawler's fun to watch, and I hope he can get past. I don't remember the person he's fighting with or fighting against in July, but Robbie Lawler just beat Nick Diaz, which wasn't that exciting of a fight. In terms of the guys, didn't really look that good because they didn't really cut any weight towards the end there, but Robbie Lawler, he's going to be a Hall of Famer, and he deserves to be on the ranking. He might fall off the ranking, though. If this could be his last fight, I don't know when Robbie Lawler's had enough, but he's my number 7 currently. My number 6 is somebody that retired but came back after, a 4-year absence, and I really like this fighter, especially when she won the women's bantamweight championship the night that Conor fought Nate Diaz for the first time, and I'm talking about Miesha Tate. I really like Miesha Tate. Some people don't really like her. I do. I think her striking is okay, but her grappling and her wrestling is really good, and that's what got her the victory against Holly Holm. And then, the submission at the end, and Holly didn't tap. Holly just went out, and Miesha Tate won. And I was like, I told you she'd win, even though she looked like crap. The 3 rounds, it was like 3 rounds to 2. But Miesha Tate did win the championship. She got slaughtered by Amanda Nunes. And I would love to see that fight again. I don't know if it's ever going to happen because Miesha Tate lost her last fight after her comeback fight where she fought somebody that was really old and had lost a lot of fights. But Miesha Tate does have a fight coming up, and hopefully she wins and someday gets another title shot because I'd like to see what she can do. But Miesha Tate is my number 6. My number 5 is actually surprising. I never thought I would have this guy in my favorite fighter ranking ever. Did not like him at first, but this guy took it to Rafael dos Anjos. This guy took it to Robbie Lawler like no one else. And then his wars with Kamaru Usman. And of course, I'm talking about Colby Chaos Covington. I mean, his shtick, love him or hate him, the guy brings it in the octagon. He beat Masvidal, which I expected. I think he beat Usman the first time. That fight was so close. Well, actually, I take that back because that fight should not have been stopped. Covington had his hands around the guy's legs, Usman's legs, and Usman was hitting him with illegal shots. I think if that fight goes the distance and Mark Goddard doesn't stop it, Colby Covington is your new welterweight champion, I should say. But it is what it is. You know what? It was a great showing in the octagon. He took it to Usman, and then the second time, after a couple mediocre rounds, he turned it up. And I think Usman did win the second fight, but it got a lot closer than I expected. And the funny thing is, I watched that fight for the second time right before the night before the Whitaker Adesanya 2 fight. and I don't remember it being that close, but it actually got really close because Usman apparently broke his hand in that fight, and Covington just kept coming and kept coming, and it was a close fight. But Covington, love him or hate him, he's done some great things in the octagon. I should hate him because he's said some derogatory things about a guy that I kind of liked in John Jones, and I don't know if any of the stuff is true. I'm not going to judge, but Covington backs it up in the octagon, and that's why he's my number 4. I'm sorry, that's why he's my number 5. My number 4 is the guy with the most knockouts in the UFC. He's the Black Beast. He's fun to watch at times, and then there are times where he half-asses it. But I'm talking about Derrick Lewis. Derrick Lewis is he's very entertaining, especially if he has a post-fight interview and takes his shorts off because his balls were hot and stuff that he says. Just the guy he's awesome. I like Derrick Lewis. Unfortunately, he didn't look very good against Cyril Gane, and then he got knocked out against Tai Tuivasa, but Derrick Lewis has gave us some really awesome highlight reel knockouts, especially the one against Alexander Volkov where he was losing the fight with 10 seconds left or something like that. Then he knocks Volkov out, and his showing against Chris Dukakis and knocking out Curtis Blades when nobody thought Derrick Lewis was going to win that fight except for me. And then he kind of played possum, shrugged his shoulders, and then boom! Awesome. I like Derrick Lewis. Maybe he's not the best fighter. He's not the best technical fighter, but you got to love a guy that's the things that he says and that. So Derrick Lewis is my number 4, and hopefully he can string another couple victories again. I don't know if maybe he's starting to go downhill, though. Who knows? Okay, so I gave you my top 7. There's a big gap with my top 3 versus the people I've already named. These 3 that I'm about to name are really my favorites right now, that I absolutely love these fighters. And if they're fighting, I'm ordering the card. Well, actually, I order all the cards, as you know, but these fighters specifically are I love them. So my number 3, a guy who I didn't follow for most of his career, didn't know much about him at all. He signed with the UFC, and he was the alternate for Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Justin Gaichy. And I was just listening to the guy talk about those fighters and MMA in general, and I fell in love with him. And I'm talking about Michael Chandler. Yes, I liked Michael Chandler when he was the alternate because I was hearing him talk so much, and I would love to hear him when his career is over as a fighter, be a broadcaster, be next to Joe Rogan, if Joe Rogan's still around calling fights, which who knows if Joe Rogan's going to keep doing that. He likes to do it, but, there's going to be a point where he's like, I'm going to just concentrate on my podcast. But Michael Chandler is exciting as hell. He beat Dan Hooker in his debut fight in grand fashion, had a pretty good fight against Charles Oliveira, even knocked Oliveira down and got out of a choke. Didn't win the fight, got knocked out in the second round, which I didn't expect. And then, of course, he had the fight of the year in 2021 and my favorite fight of all time against Justin Gaichy, where Chandler, he got beat. It was obvious, but he landed some shots, and they were going to war, especially in that first round. And then, of course, the most recent, the kick to Tony Ferguson's chin, that's like one of the greatest knockouts ever, at least for a kick, for sure. And I love Michael Chandler. He's just great. And the guy can talk so well. That promo he cut, for you, Charles, for you, Justin, and Conor McGregor. I mean, Michael Chandler is fucking unbelievable. I hope he does achieve his goal of being the UFC lightweight champion of the world. I'm not sure how he's going to do it, but I really do hope that he does that. I would love to see him beat Conor McGregor. I would love to see him fight Gaethje again, and maybe Chandler wins the second fight. Or him and Poirier, I think, would be a fun fight, too. I think Chandler wins that fight because he's good everywhere. The guy is a freakish athlete that's 5'8" and nothing but muscle. But I've talked enough about Michael Chandler. He's my number 3. He could be my number 2 someday. But my number 2, this guy is always in fun fights, although Chandler has been in all fun fights that I've seen. Knockouts galore. Fight bonuses galore. Just lost a title fight, unfortunately, where he was the only one that could win the title. But, of course, Many of you know that I'm already talking about Justin the Highlight Gaichy. I fell in love with Justin Gaichy when I saw him fight in his debut fight. I just happened to somehow catch the Ultimate Fighter or whatever the hell it was on. It was like a Sunday, and I remember Todd Grisham was the announcer for it. And Justin Gaichy versus Michael Johnson was the main event. I think it was the Ultimate Fighter finale or something to do with the Ultimate Fighter. Maybe not. But it was a fight night or something like that. It was on a Sunday. And Justin Gaichy and Michael Johnson went to war. Both fighters at numerous times looked like they were getting knocked out or falling over. And honestly, if John McCarthy could have stopped the fight at the end of the first round when Gaichy was in trouble. But he let Gaichy go, and Gaichy ended up winning the fight. But it was a fucking awesome fight. And then, of course, I saw him have some fun fights with Dustin Poirier and Eddie Edwards. Or Eddie Edwards. Eddie Alvarez. In losing fashion, though. And then coming back and knocking out James Vick, Edson Barbosa, Donald Cerrone, Tony Ferguson. What a performance against Tony Ferguson. Holy shit. That was crazy because I don't think anybody thought Gaichy was going to win, except for me. I did pick Gaichy. And then, of course, the fight against Khabib Nurmagomedov. I thought Gaichy looked good, even though the fight didn't last long, but obviously Khabib had some injury issues going into the fight that made him look a little less elite, but he still wiped the floor with Gaichy. And then, of course, his fight with Michael Chandler, that was fucking unbelievable. And Gaichy, I wish he was a little bit more technical because he just kind of stands there and punches. I mean, the guy should learn and do more submissions and be a little bit more of a threat on the ground and grappling. But, I mean, when you're good at something, you're good at something. And, of course, his most recent fight against Charles Oliveira, he looked good. He got Oliveira dazed a few times because Oliveira went down twice. I don't know how hurt Oliveira was, but unfortunately Gaichy was choked out. But doesn't change the fact that I absolutely love Justin Gaichy, and he is my number 2. Him and Michael Chandler, I love those two fighters. Those two are definitely going to stay in my top fighters list for a while to come. In my all-time fighters list, certainly they're up there. And then, of course, we are at my number 1. And I mentioned that there's some fighters on this list that are inactive. This guy has a very heavily rumored fight to happen, most likely in September, against the heavyweight GOAT, Stipe Miocic. And that, of course, would be Jon Bones Jones. Now, say what you want about Jon Jones. I don't condone anything that he does outside the octagon. I don't know what happened that night in Vegas where his daughter called the police and something was wrong with his wife. I don't know what happened. If he beat his wife, that's a shitty thing. If he hurt his wife, hurt himself, obviously, that night, headbutting a cop car, all the steroid allegations. I honestly think Jon Jones is a clean fighter. I think somehow, some way his stuff got tainted, but I don't know what happened with the stuff with his, the Vegas night, the Hall of Fame night with his wife. That kind of just got swept under the rug, and now Jess split up with him, or actually it was his fiance. So, withstanding all that, Jon Jones I think, has the highest fight IQ that I've seen. No matter how much stuff is going on with Jon Jones, he just seems to have it in the octagon. He's had a lot of great fights, a lot of great defenses in the octagon. Of course, winning the title from Mauricio Shogun Rua, beating Quentin Rampage Jackson, Chael Sonnen, Lyoto Machida, Rashad Evans, Vitor Belfort, which Jones was in a pretty bad situation in that fight with that armbar, but persevered and won the fight by submission. He beat Glover Teixeira, had that war with Alexander Gustafsson, which is a fight that's in the Hall of Fame. I think Jones did clearly win that fight. Gustafsson was fucking him up with the jab, but that's all he was really doing. And then, of course, the second fight, he dominated Gustafsson. His fights with Daniel Cormier, he had 2 wins until the one got overturned. He has 1 loss on his record, and that's a disqualification for an illegal 12-6 elbow, which is bullshit. And I think Steve Mazzagatti handled that fight very wrong. But it is what it is. Jon Jones, outside the octagon, it doesn't sound like things are very good for him. But inside the octagon, right now, I still love Jon Jones. I've met him before. I spent a lot of money to go meet him in New Jersey. And he's the GOAT. As far as I'm concerned, he's the GOAT. I know Khabib, he was undefeated, but he didn't have the long reign that Jon Jones has had. Jon Jones essentially has never lost his title. He's either given it up or been stripped because of his extracurricular activities, and I don't condone any of that. So, if John Jones wins the heavyweight championship, which I expect him to do if him and Stipe have an interim title shot, I think John Jones handles Stipe pretty easily. Not to take anything away from Stipe, but I just think John Jones at heavyweight will be powerful, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's some knockouts. And remember, John Jones used to knock out people all the time. He just stopped doing the crazy shit. What if he goes back to doing some crazy shit, like spinning elbows and flying knees and weird combination? I don't know, but I'm looking forward to John Jones coming back. I can't wait. As far as the fight with Dominic Reyes, let's address that elephant that's in the room. I do think if I'm the judge in that fight, it's Dominic Reyes 3-2. Now, if you judge the fight based on octagon control, then John Jones has the octagon control. But there was enough action where you didn't have to do that. So I do think Reyes beats Jones 3-2 in that fight. Reyes winning the first 3 rounds, Jones winning the final 2. However, if the fight kept going, John Jones was handling Reyes pretty easily towards the end. But it is what it is. I'm not a judge. All 3 judges gave the fight to John Jones. He still never lost a fight other than a DQ. So that is my favorite fighter currently in the UFC, and he's active because he has a fight that's heavily rumored. So that's my list. Let's go over it one more time. Hamza Chemiev, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Kamaru Usman, Robbie Lawler, Miesha Tate, Colby Covington, Derek Lewis, Michael Chandler, Justin Gaichy, and John Jones. So like I said, make sure you leave your top 10 favorite active fighters list in the comments section. Talk about fights you want to see. Talk about fights that are scheduled that you're excited about. Subscribe to the channel if you're a fan of MMA, UFC, or anything, because you're already watching the video. And of course, JDev will return.